The All Smiling Faces podcast is now sponsored by Tyre Spot, the Northeast's leading tyre supplier with branches across the region. Tyre Spot don't just do tyres, they cover everything from servicing to wheel alignment. They can handle every aspect of your car's maintenance. For more information, visit tyrespot.co.uk. Enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the GallowgateShots YouTube channel. And we are here with your third live show of the week, which sums up the week Newcastle United have had. It's been absolutely batshit crazy, and we're going to try and dissect little moments, especially what's happened in the last 24 hours on Tyneside. I am your host, Chris, and I am joined by Ian, and Chris is here. You've got a double Chris here. You've got a Chris sandwich today. I'm going to dive straight into it, and I am going to start with you tonight, Chris, because like I've just mentioned, the last 24 hours have been absolutely mental. Whether or not you believe all of the rumours which are doing the rounds at the moment, if you feel as if Liverpool has put in a power play, as people are saying, or if Newcastle have got one over on Merseyside. Summarize it all for us, mate, because I have no idea.
To summarize this, bloody hell, well, at least from our end of things, I suppose, you know, when you seen Liverpool come in, I think we were all under the impression that, okay, well, this is probably going to take a turn in the direction. Like, you know, for all that, you know, we will sit here and be avid Newcastle fans. If Liverpool are going to come in for the same player and match bids, whatever like that, I think we kind of know the direction it's kind of going to go. So I think we typically will always be a little bit probably like, oh, wait, okay, well, we kind of know where this is going to go. To then being turned like almost immediately, oh, we're signing Wissa now. And it's just all happening very quickly. I think all the people who are whinging about hearing Nout for the first month might be sick to their back teeth about hearing stuff over the past 24 hours, to be honest with you, after how things have been going. But it's quite quickly taking a turn on its head.
It's been absolutely crazy. Like, it really has. And I think, Ian, like I said, this is the third live show that I've done. The second consecutive week where we've had to correct errors from a Monday show. So we've done that again this week, correct the errors from the Monday, did it on Wednesday. By the time it goes out to everybody else to listen on the audio, it's changed once again. So as far as we knew yesterday, that Liverpool had approached Newcastle in an attempt to query, not bid, but to query about Alexander Isak, just to see if he was available. That door was firmly closed. Isak is not for sale, which we all knew that anyway, but we did mention this last night. I'm not going to go down the route, but every single player has a selling price. Every player's for sale at the end of the day. I just categorically don't agree with the player's not for sale. If the money's too good, yes, the club will listen. Then Newcastle had put in a bid which was rejected for Ekitike. Liverpool said, right, well, if you're not going to sell Alexander Isak, then we are going to go for Ekitike as well. That's how it's kind of panned out. Liverpool have kind of done what they said they were going to do. Have Newcastle the ones that have been taken for fools here? Or have Liverpool been quite gracious in the fact that saying, right, okay, he's not for sale, we're going to move on to the next one? Because social media is horrendous at the moment, and both sets of fans are trying to wave the victory flag. It's strange. It's a really strange place to look at.
Yeah, I've just stayed off Twitter, X, or whatever it is, because it's just full of wrong-uns, to be quite honest. But I suppose it depends. It depends on what angle you look at it from. I was saying to sort of the lads at work, from the perspective I was looking at, this situation was always going to be a win-win for Newcastle. But then I feel Liverpool could then put the same spin on it. So in terms of the situation, we could have kept hold of Isak, paid 90 million, 100 million euros, whatever, for Ekitike, and had both strikers for a season. Potentially then Liverpool, someone else could have came in for Isak next season. But it's now went the way of we've kept hold of Isak, so we would have still had a really good striker in Ekitike. In that scenario, the scenario that it looks like it's panning out, we've kept Isak by the looks of it. Liverpool, you'd be very surprised if they then came in sort of next summer with a bid for Isak to try and have both of them. After spending all that money on Ekitike, we've then turned our attention on a player that I think he's probably, his ceiling's obviously going to be nowhere near as good as Ekitike is. But for me, it carries a little bit less of a risk. I think the pros of going in for Wissa, if that is who we end up getting, far outweighs the negatives. Even in terms of going for Ekitike as well. So you look at the prices that were banded about. Ekitike was like going to be 80 to 100 million. Wissa, I think he's in the last year of his contract, and there's a figure talking about 30 to 35 million could get the deal
Brentford
sorted.
do have an option to extend his contract. Yeah.
So the only downside now is obviously Man United want Mbeumo, and I can't see Brentford letting Thomas Frank go and Mbeumo and Wissa. So I think it's going to be one of the other, because they'll not want to lose them across the same summer. But I think it was always going to be a win-win for us, because we would have ended up with, best case scenario, 2 world-class strikers up, like, still with a lot of youth on the side. Worst case scenario, we've ended up with one, which is or PLs, that is what's going to happen. Until this goes out to the audio listeners, and we'll have to do another podcast to say there's been another development.
We're signing Cisco in 3 days. Then we'll go, turn that around.
That's the other name. That is the other name. And I think, do you know what it is? I think I'll ask you this question, Chris. Do you think certain clubs, the name of certain clubs, are being used in this transfer window? Because, like Ian's just mentioned, all of a sudden Newcastle were interested in Wissa, and he's a player that were brought up a couple of times on the podcast. That because everybody's expecting a replacement for Callum Wilson, and if you're looking at age, then you're looking in the same sort of ballpark for a player coming towards the end of the career. Yes, he's 28. We know that's not old, but in football in terms, then it is a possibility that he doesn't have many seasons in top flight football remaining. So I think he was one of the players that Newcastle fans would have looked down, right, okay, well, he's a decent upgrade from Callum Wilson to be second choice to Isak. So when Ekitike's name was mentioned, you're thinking, Jesus, like, we're going for it here. That's huge. And a lot of fans were shocked at that. But with the rumours that Newcastle were showing an interest, do you think that's being leaked from Brentford, or even made up from Brentford to try and hurry up the deal for Mbeumo to Man United?
It potentially could be. I think that probably has put the frighteners on Man United, because they'll be thinking the same as what we are. But also they need to kind of get a wiggle on as well. This whole Mbeumo thing's been going on for about what feels like 6 months. I know it's been like 3 weeks, but that's how
longer than how long we've been trying to get Trafford. That's how long it's been going on.
That's how long. And you're almost like, well, I wonder if they want to push them to do that, but also they might be sick of it as well, and sort of say, right, okay, well, if Wissa's going to go, he's not going to go. But I don't know. It's hard to sometimes understand like which way they are going, because we'll have our own journalists on the northeast side of things who'll be told things to then help us in the same breath, But then when you see Romano is just tweeting out so much, the Isak thing was tweeted out multiple times, when it was mostly about Ekitike, and it was always like, if Newcastle aren't going to sell, and it's like, well, it's very apparent we're not, right? We're not going to get rid of him unless, as you kind of rightly mentioned, there's like a ludicrous bid comes in.
I love how you phrase it as "get rid of him."
Yeah, well,
like a bad smell.
Obviously not. I don't mean it, Alex. But at the same time, like it's never going to happen. But then you just see all this journalist noise kind of go on, and you never know which side of it you're really on. I think somebody made a fair point that Fabrizio Romano is probably one of the users on X who makes the most off the platform. Like, no wonder he's tweeting out every single day. I think we'd probably do the same. But at the same time, as a fan who's arguably on the wrong side of the argument, it's a bit of a pill sometimes when you see him going, Fabrizio, I want to hear we go Wissa or Ekitike to Newcastle, not you talking about Isak and to Liverpool all the bloody time. So if you could shut up on that side of things, but then obviously you can't, you kind of just have to rough for the smooth on that one. But as far as like, and I know we'll probably talk about Wissa a little bit more. I actually don't mind it. I've seen a couple of people turn their noses up at it today, and I'm kind of like, well,
comments in the chat, Chris. To be fair, that saying that he's not one that we should be looking at. He's too old, and so on and so on. I think that the fact that we're flirting with Ekitike, I think that's kind of what people's opinion.
But how many Ekitike is there kicking about? That's the thing. Like, you know, we're going to go for him or Sesko, then that's probably best case scenario. But I think to us, from my mind, I'll get called a happy clubber. But at the same time, like, I think if he's one in there that's going to come in for what, he's 28, so he's probably got a good 3-4 years kind of at a very decent level, you would like to think. If he can come in and do a job enough to keep us in those potentially Champions League spots or win trophy, whatever, keep us in Europe, which is where we need to be realistically for a couple of years, then it's worth its weight in gold if it's 40 million, 50 million, whatever it ends up being. You know, that's the point. It's not necessarily about, it doesn't always have to be somebody that you can sell on for 100 million in 5 years. Like it's just not how it's going to work. We still do need some experience or somebody who can slot in. We know is Premier League proven. What was it? I think Dan put in the chat today. He scored the most goals from open play in the Premier League last season. Yeah. I'll have to check that, but trusting Dan on that one. He's fairly good with his stats, so we'll trust him.
Well, but he didn't take a single penalty, did he? Because it wasn't no that was on spot kick, so he hasn't taken a single penalty. So he's that stat is probably spot on, to be fair.
So that's a good straight away. Okay, well that's a good sign to me, because SK doesn't necessarily have that sell on side of things. Yes, okay, PSR is an issue, but PSR becomes less of an issue if you're finishing higher in the league.
You're correct. You're 100% correct. And I think just to go back a second, Ian, the fact that we're looking at somebody to replace Callum Wilson, and the likes of Dominic Calvert-Lewin's name came into it, and you're thinking, like,
that's
really?
What's going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah. This time next week, we'll be doing this podcast about Dominic Calvert-Lewin, honestly. And I'll be by myself because I don't think anybody will want to join us for that one. But just to go back a second, I think there's a few comments in the chat, Ian, about it being a year of African Cup of Nations. We're looking at managing Isak's game time a little bit better if we have the second choice striker come in that's going to be fit and ready to go. Will the club look at Wissa and think, right, he's an option, but we are going to be losing him for a little while? I couldn't even tell you the last time we had an African player. To be fair, that was away for African Cup of Nations, but would be a little while ago.
Probably the likes of Demba Ba or what was he called? Chancellor Mbemba, maybe.
Yeah, who played for the same country, didn't he?
Yeah, I think the African Cup of Nations runs in like December, January time, if I'm not mistaken.
It's January, I think. Yeah.
And that's we're seeing last time in the Champions League how like packed the schedule was. I think we're playing something ridiculous like 16 games in 30 days or something absolutely ridiculous like that. So if you do get him in, then you probably going to have to gear up for the same of using Isak throughout the busiest period of time. And then obviously going into January as well, you've got those 2 extra Champions League games in the month of January. So from that aspect, that's probably one of the negatives. Obviously, he doesn't have a great sell-on fee, but I think the boxing clever. And I think, to be honest, I know a lot of people are turning the nose up at him, but as you just said on Monday nights, time and time again, getting the second choice striker is probably one of the hardest positions to fill in a squad. I think if you look at him, he's Premier League proven. I think he scored, was it 20 goals or something last season? 20 odd goals or 19 goals, I think it was, in the Premier League. Season on season, he's got better. So I think in the 4 seasons that he's been in, he scored 7, 11 and 19 or something.
So last season he played 35 Premier League games, started 34 of them, averages 84 minutes per game, so he's heavily involved. He scored 19 goals and 4 assists last season. Yeah, do you know what it is? I feel as if every time we'll mention a player that we're linked with, they've all had great seasons.
Had a really good season
last year.
Yeah. And the other thing as well is I was looking before we came on sort of where predominantly plays, and it is a case of he can play anywhere across the front 3, which we all know how likes. So I do think, like I said, what I said before, I do think the pros outweigh the cons on it. And like I think I think a lot of people do get carried away with still the status of the richest club in the world, but with PSR, we're not able to go and spend ridiculous amounts of money on a transfer fee, then spend £200-300 a week. At £200-300 a week, we could spend that £200,000-300,000 a week on a player, because that would just absolutely cripple work. Because we're not, I think it might have been Scott or Dan pointed out in the chat this morning, we're not consistently in the Champions League, so we're not getting those sort of big bucks. We're commercially, we're still behind the likes of Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs, Man United.
Massively, not even a
so,
little bit. Massively.
Exactly. So I've had arguments before where, oh well, we should just go and spend big. It's not as simple as that. It's not Football Manager. It's not FIFA. There's a lot more to it. And so I think for the period of time that we're in, I think he is a very sensible option, because he is Premier League proven. He's not going to then put Isak's nose out of joint as well. Isak's still going to be your main man. So you're not going to have to worry about playing them, or have the decision of, which one do I start? Whereas if you did get Ekitike, obviously you'd spend a record fee on him to come in. He would expect to be, and don't get us wrong, I do think healthy competition is good, but I think if you're looking on it on what it is, a replacement for Callum Wilson, I believe he's an upgrade on Callum Wilson Callum Wilson sort of
Definitely
last 2 seasons.
Yep.
And like you said, he's played 35 games last season, so he's not missed many games. And his output was tremendous last season. He's had a really good season. So,
and I think just sticking with that, Chris, I think that the fact that I had gone in for João Pedro and he chose Chelsea, which he was always going to do, probably similar to like you mentioned earlier. As soon as Liverpool come to the front with players, especially foreign players, that they're kind of going to go choose the option of Liverpool and Chelsea. One, for location for Chelsea, money which is being offered by both clubs will be superior compared to what we can offer without smashing our wage structure out the door. But the reason I mentioned Pedro is because that what Ian mentioned earlier on is that versatility. And it seems that that's the way Newcastle are looking at replacing and upgrading Callum Wilson. They're looking at a player that, yes, predominantly is a striker, but you have the option to play on either sides as well.
Of course, which is good in the sense of Wissa, but then it kind of gets me thinking, well, who else is there in that mold? Because I can't imagine there is a hell of a lot of players that Eddie Howe specifically would want to go with. As we said, we've kind of got a box clever with how we are in PSR. In absolute fairness to us, and I think we're all in agreement that we haven't really missed on a transfer front yet. So if they're going to take their time and make sure, if they feel as if Wissa is that fit, great. And if they can't get him and they don't go for Sesko, they don't want him in that sense. So I think, it's a very. So
you mentioned Sesko. I think the issue with Sesko, he's predominantly a striker, isn't he?
He's just a striker, right?
Yeah, he's a striker. And I think if you're bringing somebody in with that versatility, you're probably looking at somebody that can work around Isak as well, rather than replace him. And he's not going to do that, is he?
Yeah. I think my problem is that I just don't understand. Like Wissa, we know can go there. Sesko, I think is just one of them. Like, okay, I think it's a very easy name to link to us for a start. Like, he's one that's kind of been battered around so much. But then as well, I sort of look at this profile that we're trying to fit. Okay, João Pedro was a great one. Ekitike was a great one. Wissa is a good one. Top of my head, I can't really think of too many others who fit. And Mbeumo is obviously one of them, but I mean, that doesn't. I mean, as soon as he said he would prefer to go to Man United, frankly, he is. I don't want to sign him after that conversation. Who else could you really say is going to fit into that role? Marmoush last season, he's at City. Like, that's kind of the options top of my head. Again, I'm not a football encyclopedia who knows all these strikers who can play different roles across the entirety of Europe, but start naming names and I couldn't do any right now. So I think if Wissa is one that really does fit into that mold, and if we can get, I mean, I know the quota price, I've seen 50 million battered around. That would feel like a lot in fairness, but it's also half the price of what we're probably going to pay for Ekitike. So I think, you've got to kind of take that into consideration.
I think the 50 million is just inflated. Was if the extension is triggered, so he does sign. I think that was a 50 million. Apparently, Newcastle could get him between the 30 and 40 million mark, which I think it's it's good business. Like it's good business in today's market, especially we keep on mentioning how more expensive players are that have that Premier League experience, Ian, and it doesn't come cheaply. Far from it. We've looked at the likes of Alanga. People turn their noses up at 50 million, which I thought was a decent price at 50 million. For the numbers which he had, and I think exactly the same way we say yes, he doesn't have that sell-on value. We know that because apparently Newcastle don't sell players to the Saudi league for high value. It's every other club that's allowed to do that apart from Newcastle. But do you know what it is? I think it's a no-brainer, and I would hate to be sitting here this time next week and think, right, Newcastle have moved on from that target, and that'll be another one for those lot on social media to say, oh, Newcastle have had another player reject their approach, blah, 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 and to be sat here doing the same podcast on Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I don't want that.
Yeah, that would be a bit gutting. Obviously, if you look at if you look at the shame, Andy Carroll's just signed for Dagenham and Redbridge as well. Could have got him back. He would have helped with the homegrown quarter.
Ever so versatile as well, isn't he?
Yes. So dynamic.
I think if you look at it again, it's people being able to spin narratives. You look at where we seriously linked with Liam Delap. Who knows? You then went to João Pedro. He's went. Ekitike, he's went. But I do think, again, it could just be thinking positively, but it could have been the whole scenario like we had a few seasons ago where it looked like we're really heavily linked with Barella, and then out of nowhere we signed Sandro Tonali. It could have been a case of smoke and mirrors. It could have been a case of force in Liverpool's hand. They've had to not get their first choice striker. They've had to go for someone else, which, yes, strengthens them, but it also strengthens us as well because we keep our star man. But yeah, I think, like you were saying, I think it is a no-brainer for what he will be, which is essentially a Callum Wilson replacement. I think he's an upgrade on him. It then allows you, because if you do get him for that 30, 35, 40 million or whatever, it then allows you to still invest in a centre-half, a keeper, other areas of the squad where I think we do need. I think I sent into the chat this afternoon in terms of priority. I still think a backup striker is probably like high on the list. I would say maybe he's a centre-half first, backup striker, goalkeeper, because as much as Isak's absolutely wonderful and he's great, we're potentially in a 50, 60 game season this season. And although I agree with you, I don't think he's injury prone. He does have the odd niggle where it keeps him out for a few games. There is a few games, again, we've seen at the end of the season, potentially because he was carrying a knock, an injury, where he sort of kind of plateaued a little bit and wasn't getting on the score sheet, wasn't really involved in games. You don't want to go through a full season where you've got Isak and Asula as your only options. I think I made this point a few seasons ago when we got rid of Chris Wood, where you had Isak, who had been out for a few games the season prior, and Wilson as the only two options. And I think that was the season we might have, finished seventh. So we're still there and thereabouts, but you think there was opportunities where if you had a third striker, that could have pushed you up another place or two, particularly with seemingly fifth place looking like it gets you Champions League football again. That's another 50 million into your kitty. So
I want to go through a couple of the comments that have came in. If anybody else does have any questions, send them our way. We're probably going to go for another 10-15 minutes. So send them our way, and we'll go through as many as possible. But this one is somebody that's on the other side of the fence of us, so we might as well show it and discuss it. It's from Andy H. That is, we should stay well clear of Wissa. A decent player, but he is 29 in September. He isn't going to get a 3-year deal, and this time next season we'll be in the same boat. The deal would make no sense. I think if I started off, I get what you're saying. Of course I do. Age is the issue here. I think the club are probably looking at that next season possibly being Isak's last season at the club. And I don't think any fans could begrudge Alex for going elsewhere if he feels as if he's hit his ceiling at Newcastle. And there's options there. And the all that Isak gets as well, those options will start disappearing as well. If he has options at the end of this season, let's say we have a very similar season to what we did this year in regards to the league, We'll get a Champions League spot. It's all rosy. As a fan base, fantastic, brilliant. But as a footballer, you'll be right. What else can I do? What else can I win? And he's actually going to probably look elsewhere at the likes of Liverpool or go overseas, which I think everybody would agree that you would much prefer him to go overseas. That's why I think that we need to look at it slightly different. Yes, you're saying that we might be in this same spot this time next season, but we might have a fair chunk of money coming our way so we can readdress this whole situation once again. What's your thoughts on it, Chris?
I just wonder if the whole Ekitike small saga, I don't know, has it skewed what we think in the sense of what we need? Because I think when it all started, I think, what was it, Luke Edwards who posted it first, and we were all just like, well, are we really going to spend that on a secondary striker? You know, it seemed a bit over the top, and I just don't know if that's made, because it kind of made me think that way. So, okay, well, we're going for Ekitike, so now why are we going for Wissa? And there is that sense of, okay, well, that's quite, with all due respect to Wissa, a downgrade in terms of, you know, the age profile, the profitability potentially in the future. It is a downgrade in that sense. As far as Premier League proven, though, it's not a downgrade because we know exactly what Wissa can do.
It's less of a risk. Yeah.
It's 100% less of a risk. Although I do still feel as if Ekitike was a very minimal risk at that. But you know for a fact that Wissa has that Premier League experience. He can slot straight into the team. So for me, I think it is somewhat of a stopgap. I agree with the comment. Are we going to be in the same situation? But I don't think Wissa is ever going to be our guy at centre forward. That I think if he comes in, he's going to be that secondary filling in the cup games, coming in for some Premier League games. Obviously, when we've got Champions League games, Isak is always going to be that guy at first. And I think this is all ifs, buts, and maybes if we do sign him. But I think he's always going to be that secondary to a certain degree, whereas Ekitike was the replacement and the secondary. I think that, you know, that is why the overinvestment was going in there.
Kind of the understudy, wasn't it?
Yes, of course. Whereas Wissa's going to come in. If he comes in, I'm sounding like a Liverpool fan here who's already signed Isak. if Wissa comes in, he is going to be that second guy, and that is going to be his probable, I want to say, job for the remainder of his career at Newcastle, if that happens. With all due respect to him, but he's not as good as Alexander Isak, and I would imagine that we would, as you said, reinvest that Isak money if he does go. I kind of don't like the whole expecting him to go next season, because I mean, you know, in a world that, you know, we did some mental things last season by winning a cup and finishing the Champions League group at stages, then, you know, you never know what's going to happen, kind of thing. I mean, I don't think we're going to challenge for the title by any stretch.
The sad thing in football, and especially as a football fan, I think it makes life a little bit easier if you realise that there's a pecking order when it comes to football clubs. That's always going to remain there. And you look at going to Liverpool from Newcastle, players, yeah, I hate to say it, but players will entertain it. Of course they will. Like, and you look even the next step above that. Look at how Trent treated Liverpool towards the end and went to Real Madrid. There's that pecking order, and that pecking order is always gonna stay there, and we can't change that unless we start winning things. Which moves us on to the fact that we're talking about the possibility of this being Isak's last season coming up, Ian. How do we change that? What do we offer Isak without? Because we mentioned earlier on in our group chat that we've got as well, and it was mentioned in the Telegram group that members get access to as well, is how do you keep Alexander Isak happy without pissing off the rest of the players around him when it comes to contract negotiations? Because there's a very fine line of offering, let's say, just I'm throwing it out there. This won't happen, but I'm throwing it out there. You double Isak's wage. You put him in line with what other proven Premier League strikers are making at top clubs. How does that affect the rest of the team dynamics? How does that affect Tonali, to Bruno, to your key players that'll also be looking at other likes of central midfield players and thinking, hang on a second, they're making that much money at other clubs. You've got Isak that's making twice as much as me. I want a new contract as well. It's very, very hard that you don't cross that line and don't cause a domino effect. How can we solve that?
It's I mean, if you want to pay us 250 grand a year to be director of football or whatever, throw the money my way, because
go to Chelsea, mate, you'll get more.
It's you exactly right. It's a very, very sort of delicate balancing act, because it's a case of, I mean, I'm not sure, I can't remember how much Isak's on, but you've got the likes of, say, Kai Havertz or Marcus Rashford on astronomical wages, and I get their clubs, well, maybe Man United can't afford it anymore, but they can afford those astronomical wages because they're getting consistent money, they're getting consistent commercial revenue.
It's rumored, but in me, just to answer your question, it's rumored that Isak is on approximately 120 grand a week.
I mean, say for example, you put that figure in Man U squad, he's probably like going to be one of the lowest earners there. So I think if you're exactly right in saying, like, I get he's the main man, he's the striker, he's the one that scores the goals, he's the one that wins the games. But what's stopping them, the likes of Bruno or Tonali or Sven Botman or whoever, looking at and go, well, no, I contribute just as much in other ways. Where's my increase? So it is a very, very difficult task to keep him happy, but also within financial means. So you're not then, like you say, just pressing the self-destruct button when we're not that club. And I think a lot of people do get carried away and maybe think it's very similar to like FIFA and Football Manager, where you can just give people this amount of money and everything's fine. It's not the way football works, unfortunately. To answer your question, or like off the top of my head, it could be like offering the base amount and then each season based on performance or like your final position or whatever.
Heavily incentivized sort of thing.
Yeah, that's probably the only way that you're gonna get sort of around it. But it's, I mean, hopefully, say for example, he stays another season or two. Hopefully, then we are in a position where we're a little bit more financially flexible in terms of offering a little bit bigger contracts. But I do think a lot of fans as well get sort of caught up in the whole, oh well, he loves Newcastle. Like, for instance, Bruno loves Newcastle and he wants to end his career here. At the end of the day, the professionals are doing a job. If you're doing a job well, you want as much money, because footballers have short careers. And I know people say, oh well, they're paid millions and millions and they're set for life. Yes, they are. But if you are good at your job, or equally as good as your job as someone where you work and they get a pay increase, you do, like you say, as good a job, wouldn't you be thinking, well, how come I'm not getting a pay increase? It is literally, at the end of the day, when you strip it back, a job. But we have to tread a very, very careful line in if we are going to offer an extension to Isak, on not putting anyone at, like, upsetting the apple cart, so to speak.
Just because you mentioned it as well, just I've had a quick look at, and you mentioned Manchester United, so I've looked at a Manchester United striker just to see what their weekly earnings were compared to Alexander Isak's. Rasmus Højlund, how much do you think he's making per week?
Far too fucking much.
How much do I think he should be making? Or
so he is rumored to be making between 85 and 90 grand a week.
Oh, okay. Well, I actually thought it'd be more than that.
I was expecting it to be close to 200.
Yeah. Well, it's what, 30 grand less than Isak per week. Yeah. If you look at it that way, he's a lot more money.
Still too much. Yeah. I thought it'd be more than that. I thought that because they sent him quite a bit. He was kind of well sought after at the time. But yeah, I think.
Oh, actually, wait there. I've doubled. Oh, no, I'm right. Yeah, 90 grand. Yeah, it's about 90 grand. It is. I thought it was going to be about 100, but no, 90 grand rumored, which is mental.
How much we can potentially play him, because we none of us really know the finances. We don't really know like how it all kind of plays out. But I think as long as I think in my mind, at least anyway, in a sensibility, I think you've got to kind of be pushing towards that 200 mark. I think like that's realistically where you're going to have to get him, and whatever that does, I think. For all that, you're gonna, as you said, like to the core players, like your Bruno's. You think of our best players, Bruno, Tonali, Isak. Like that's kind of where we're going to be golden towards as well.
You missed out Joe Linton.
But I just don't feel as if like Joe Linton, in a weird way, I just don't feel like he command that. But then that's just probably me being.
He could. Do you know what it is? He could demand the world, and I would give him that. I would make him the highest paid player at the football club.
Well, I'd be down for that I as well. But at the same time, like all these other players who are in that top tier of our players would probably have to understand as well, like he is a striker, they do just get paid more. So I think, that's typically how it does work. But I think, we're going to have to raise them all up at some stage, if we want to keep a hold of them. But then that just comes with the territory of having to keep finishing higher. And that's, I don't know, we're kind of I don't want to say we're on a precipice. We're in a good spot, realistically. It's almost this PSR side of things is a bit of a wet blanket on what has been a fantastic season, and we are succeeding, we are doing well, and it's just like, oh wait, actually fuck us, we can't really do a lot, and it does kind of put a downer, and it does make you feel as if like, oh okay, well why are we having to scrimp and scrape here? But it's just how it is, unfortunately. Like it's just that awkward side of things where we can't really do a great deal with it. We just kind of have to do what we can.
And I think if we're greedy caps off for a little bit, Ian, and demanding such a partnership in Isak and Ekitike, which we were this time yesterday, I feel as if that deal had been finalized and it went through, I think you then, yes, it looks great, right? Attacking, it looks great, but then I think you're basically using all of your money, and you're not going to bring those quality replacements in for the likes of a goalkeeper or a centre back. I think now that we've gone back to the table here and thought, right, okay, what else can we do? The likes of being linked with Wissa opens up that door of, once again, the Trafford deal just rolls on and rolls on. Like, we were all clean shaven when this first started. Then you look at the backup positions for a centre back as well. That's something which needs addressed very, very quickly. We tried to do it last season and bringing Gay in. That's all gone quiet on that front in regards to the player going anywhere, to be fair. It needs improved. That position needs improved as well. So that means we'll have to take a bit of a hit in regards to looking at a stopgap, I'm going to say, for next season, and bringing a backup striker in the likes of Wissa. I'm saying stopgap, and I found that's really insulting for him because he's a good player, but that's the word I'm going to go with. If that means that we can then go in and bring in a decent centre-back as well, and Trafford, let's say, I'm all for that, to be fair.
Yeah, it's very much a case of what I said before in terms of looking at your priorities. Would it have been nice to have £100 million striker to play for a season, 2 seasons with Isak, who is a world-class striker? Of course it would. But I think it's almost, I wouldn't say they got caught up in it, but I think they've probably reevaluated and thought, actually, no, this money could be spent elsewhere. Like, you could use 100 million and get world-class play. You could use 50 million and get 2 excellent players. And I think where we are at the moment, like, no disrespect, but like, we've still got Jamal Lascelles in the squad, who is he's probably where you've got Dan Burns, Shea, Botman, or your 3 standout centre halves, and then Lascelles. He was with us in the Championship, and that's no disrespect to Jamal Lascelles. When he came in the Champions League season, he did really, really well. Obviously, he had that injury that ruled him out all of last season. But you've still got players like him. You've got Joe Willock, who I think is flat out deceived last season. If we are wanting to be consistently looking at European football, going a bit further in European competitions, you need to have good depth in terms of quality and quantity as well. It's no good just having a world-class striker if you then your second choice centre backs like one of the like Alex Murphy or whoever, which I think that's maybe what they've then reconsidered and thought we could probably use this money a little bit more sensibly.
I've just had a quick look across social media there just to make sure nothing had happened before we end this stream. And it looks fine. It looks fine. But once again, just like it was said yesterday, I feel as if you've got the likes of Ornstein and Romano that are sat watching this, ready to hit something as soon as we end this one. But I'm going to end it with this question as well for you, Chris. Let's say the Wissa deal gets done, and we bring in a centre-back and a goalkeeper in Trafford. Is that a successful transfer window for you? Nobody goes. Well, none of it was starting 11.
Other than Longstaff.
I'd say undoubtedly, yeah. Well, depending on who the centre-back was, of course, as well. But, say it's Scalvini, then in that case, let's create this dream world in a certain sense. I think it absolutely is. Yeah, I think, again, I just feel as if this whole Ekitike thing's got people very excited, and rightfully so. I think we were all like, bloody hell, that'd be fucking mental. But then at the same time, I feel as if that was one that was an opportunistic one where we sort of thought, okay, well, this is actually ticking a couple of different boxes. Can play with Isak. Is great replacement for him if and when he does go. Okay, that would be fantastic. But then we wouldn't have been able to do business elsewhere, is kind of the understanding that we had. So in the sense of that, okay, that isn't happening. I think at the beginning of the window, Wissa was put to. I think he was rumored a little bit anyway. For a few different clubs who are interested. I think, a lot of people are probably more excited about Wissa then than they are now because of the Ekitike situation. I think if you bring in him, a defender, preferably Scalvini and Trafford, and we've got Ekitike, I think that is a solid 8.59 out of 10 window for me. I think this whole Ekitike thing has thrown a cat amongst the pigeons, so to speak, in the sense of what our expectations are, what money we have to play with, what kind of thing we're really going for, what has been our main goal this transfer window. It kind of changed the goalposts a little bit. Whereas I think if you look at that transfer window you just said a week ago, I think everybody would be absolutely buzzing with that. I think now it has maybe just reined it in a little bit, but for me still, I think if you were to separate the wood from the trees, that's a fantastic window for me if that happens.
Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, I echo everything he said. I think if you can get, because realistically, those positions are the ones that we need upgrades for. It could be positions that then, I think shares at 32, 33 now. Dan Burns getting on a bit. Lascelles, again, I think he's in his 30s with an ACL injury. So Nick Pope as well, he's had 2 shoulder injuries. I know keepers are a little bit different in terms of age, but if you're looking at bringing in good quality players that are young, that can still develop under a coach like Eddie Howe, I think it's an absolutely fantastic window. Yes, it would have probably been a 10 out of 10 had you got Ekitike and those. I still think even if we were to get Wissa and then add those 2 additional players, you've set up a really good squad, both starting 11 and squad players as well. My only concern, I'll ask you this as a question. So let's say, for example, tomorrow, because likely happen tomorrow, or it'll happen when we finish recording, if the Wissa deal is then off, what's your plan then? Because
Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
literally for a seat, because for me it's a case of, like I said earlier on in the show, you can't go into a season where you're going to be playing 50, 60 games with Isak and Asula. Yeah. I love Asula. He's great. He's absolutely off his tits. He's got a lot of raw attributes that can be molded, but it would concern me if we don't get Wissa and we don't end up with any striker, even like say a second choice striker. That would really concern us.
I agree.
We need somebody
I
at
agree.
least.
Yeah, there's somebody, but once again, we're just going to go down the route of saying it's very, very hard to have that player as a backup striker. Hence,
Gerard has DCL or nobody.
Exactly. Well, yeah. I think that's what it might come down to.
Yeah.
To be fair, it could possibly go down that route, and I think a lot of fans, probably myself included, look at that thing and how have we fucked this one up so much. Like, I think I will, but hopefully it never gets to that. But you know what is the whole thing which we were concerned about going into this sort of transfer window is probably similar to what it was last summer, where we're worried that somebody was going to come in and take Bruno from where. I think we're now looking at this transfer window and thinking, right, if Liverpool have moved on and their star striker is going to be Ekitike, that means that Isak's staying with us because he's not going anywhere else in the Premier League. He's not going to go to the likes of Real Madrid, Barcelona at this moment in time, PSG. It's not that right time for those to sign him. So I think we're off. Okay,
If buys were at least another season, I think, of Isak. In that time, I think that's when you need to sort of be bold and say, right, this is what we're going to offer you in terms of a contract. But again, that all comes down to PSR and all the like of.
And I think just to throw it in there, we're talking about giving Isak an improved deal, which he deserves. Of course, he does. But I think if you're getting the likes of Liverpool walking away from potentially signing Isak, that kind of puts that contract negotiation on a bit of a back burner for us because there's no immediate threat for him leaving. Yes, you want to keep him happy and there's been interest, but If the likes of Liverpool and can't buy him, then you're out of player. We don't initially have to do it, but I get your future going forward. You probably are going to have those chats.
But it would put us in a better position for next year, though, because then he would have, however, 4 or 5 years left on his contract rather than the 2 that it'll be next year. But again, like just something to touch on as well. Sorry, I know you want to end this, Chris, but at the same time, like I really, really try not to take social media as gospel for a group of fans, because I said before we went live, like for me, it's always the worst of the fan bases that you see on social media replying to your tweets. It's mostly 14-year-old Liverpool fans. But at the same time, I've seen a lot from them saying, well, we'll just come back next season. I think, like, if you're going to spend 100 million on Ekitike, there's not a chance you just sack that off next season, then go and spend 150 on Isak. Like, that's not going to happen from their end of things. So I just a little sound off on that. If Liverpool sign Ekitike, I don't see them signing Isak full stop. I don't think.
Do you think that deal will get done? Because it looks like the more you read into it, it looks like it's taken over, doesn't it?
Well, I think they need to, or we'll get him, and I think that's their work.
Yeah. We've kind of like I said earlier, and that tweet that I put on,
I think we'll play the blinder
today. Same we've played Liverpool for mugs, and we've kind of forced their hands. I stand by it. I think that Newcastle have been bold. Yes, the opportunity came to sign Ekitike, the listening offers. So yes, if our deal had been agreed, then yes, he's a Newcastle United player, and I think Isak stays as well. I think Liverpool have probably panicked a little bit and thought, shit, Isak's definitely not for sale. We're going to have to do something before they do. And this is what snowballed from that.
I think you've seen a lot of
definitely forced a hand.
Yeah, 100%. I think you've seen a lot of Liverpool fans saying that they bullied us into it. But in my head, I've thought, well, okay, who is the one currently with a striker that isn't having to spend 100 million? And that's us. So we've won.
Premier League proven. Who's fucking amazing as well in the Premier League.
And he's better. Ekitike is younger, yes, but I mean, until proven otherwise, Isak is a much better striker than Ekitike.
Right, I'm going to end it there. Anything that you want to say as a side note before we ditch this one and bin it all off and do another one tomorrow?
No, there's no point in wasting my breath.
Thanks everybody who has joined in live tonight. It's always great to listen to your comments and see your comments coming in as well. A lot of our regulars and members in the chat as well. Like I said, always great to see and hear from you. If you do want to become a member, it is just $2.99 a month to do that. You do get early access to videos, you get extra videos as well, and you do get access to that Telegram group. That Telegram group has been absolutely crazy in the last 48 hours. It's always busy throughout the season and the off season, but I'm telling you now, it's been mental in there in regard to the amount of messages which have been going in there, and very similar to what we've been doing with podcasts. People have a discussion, then 24 hours later, just binning that whole discussion off and starting again. This is just what we do on Tyneside these days. If you don't want to become a member, you can just become a subscriber. It costs you nothing to do with that as well. And whilst you are there, if you would just like this video, it means a lot to us as well. Helps us out going forward. But we'll probably see you tomorrow. Watch what he's doing.
That's
Cheers, boys.
Get him in.